Okay, let's kick off. Hi everybody, thank you for joining our webinar on how to deliver RPA for SAP. This is Darren Moulton here from DVW Analytics. I'll take you through the first part of the webinar, and then I'll hand over to Ian James from our team, who will actually demonstrate the capabilities to you, so you get a sense of how this can work for you within your environment using Alteryx and the DVW Analytics software products. So let's take a quick look at the agenda. Just three simple items here. First of all, so why use Alteryx and DVW Analytics for RPA? Hopefully I'll address that for you in a couple of minutes. And then we're going to take a close look at SAP GUI scripting. A lot of you will already be familiar with this capability within SAP, but it really opens up some interesting possibilities for us when we incorporate this within our Alteryx workflows. And also HTML scripting. So this opens up our capabilities around automating SAP Fiori extracts or inputs, for example, utilizing the SAP cloud solutions, as well as other non-SAP cloud solutions as well. And then Ian will take you through the demonstration, and we'll show both some of the GUI scripting capabilities and some examples, as well as the HTML scripting capabilities and a couple of examples. So I hope you find it useful. So why use Alteryx and DVW Analytics for this RPA processes? You'll have seen some variation in this diagram for sure in the past. From DVW's perspective, we sit on both the left-hand side and the right-hand side. So we're all about actually enabling as easy access to your SAP data as possible through our products. And on the right-hand side, our ability to create, upload, change data in those SAP systems as well through an Alteryx workflow. Now in the middle here, we have all the rich capability that Alteryx brings with its analytic process automation platform. But we were thinking, this has all the components that I need for an RPA solution. So why would I do all this work within Alteryx and hand it off to another solution when I can actually do all the automation directly within Alteryx itself? So this is kind of what got us thinking about extending our tool set to incorporate scripting capability within SAP systems and also web applications. So let's just take a high-level view here of our integration platform. Now, many of you will be aware of our DVW integration platform through our use, through your use of our Alteryx Connector for SAP products. But we work with a number of other SAP products as well. And on the diagram here, we're just showing you a partial list of the supported SAP products. So in addition to our core ECC and S/4HANA, our variations of SAP BW, business objects, we also work with integrated business planning, the whole suite of SAP CX cloud-based solutions, as well as SuccessFactors. And we have the ability to both extract data from those systems, as well as write data back into those systems. In the Alteryx context, our Alteryx connectors for SAP work both with Alteryx Designer and critically for automation, Alteryx Server as well. So let's just peel the onion slightly here and take a slightly more granular view of the world. And what we've highlighted here is the capabilities of two of our key products. The product that we'll talk primarily about today, which is our Alteryx RPA connector in this nice purple blocks, as well as the darker blue, which is our core Alteryx connector for SAP product. So what we want to address then is the ability for us to record, for example, an SAP transaction via the SAP GUI as a script, capture that script, parameterize that script, and then effectively execute the workflow that uses that script. So if we can record it and parameterize it, then we can automate it, and then we have an RPA based solution in the making here. So on the left-hand side, our core capabilities around GUI would be SAP GUI itself, but also with SAP Fiori screens, which are HTML based, as well as the HTML that is used in the various SAP cloud-based solutions. But the HTML capability isn't necessarily tied to SAP, so it opens up some interesting possibilities for us outside of SAP in products such as Salesforce, maybe ServiceNow, and so on and so forth through our HTML scripting. And we also have, coming down the pipe, we won't really cover at all today, is some Windows scripting capability that will also form part of the Alteryx RPA connector. So we have the ability then to pull data through scripting, as well as write data through scripting mechanisms. And I think where we're seeing this being used primarily, particularly on the writing side, is where IDOC or BAPI or OData maybe stretch too far for some of our users' knowledge of SAP. If you can record it and parameterize it, then we can automate it. So it simplifies the process of loading data into SAP systems. And in discussions we've had to date with our customers who are trialing this particular tool, they're interested in two scenarios. One scenario is whereby they use the RPA connector to build proof of concept to prove out a particular automation process through Alteryx and related to SAP. Once they've proven it out, they'll then revert to our IDOC or OData or BAPI tools to actually productionize it. That's kind of one set of users we're seeing there. The other set is where you have very specific requirements and it's sufficient for you to use scripting within the SAP system, and you're quite happy to move this into a sort of productionized type of environment. Now, the Alteryx RPA connector, you'll see when we come to demonstrations, it is as tightly integrated within Alteryx as our other Alteryx products, including the Alteryx connector for SAP. All of our tools that comprise our connectors work very nicely with the various Alteryx tools. Right? So for you, it's just another tool you drag onto the canvas and start building out and configuring to deliver the expected outcomes for you. Okay. Right, so let's take a short look at GUI scripting. So if I'm doing GUI and if I can record it via scripting GUI, then I can automate it, right? So a couple of maybe scenarios that you would want to consider. One would be the execution capture of the outputs from SAP transactions that deliver a report-like output. Right, I've got one of the, I think it's the FBL 1N or FBL 3N transaction on the screenshot on the left-hand side there. So we can use the GUI scripting to actually extract data, yeah, as an alternative to maybe using our SAP report tool within the ACS itself. But we can also use the SAP GUI scripting to create, update both master data and transaction data. Right, so this opens up, again, some nice, interesting possibilities for you. Now, the technology that enables this is technology that's freely available to you if you're an SAP customer today and are using SAP GUI. We're making use of the SAP GUI scripting capabilities. This is baked into to SAP itself. We're just utilizing those scripts, configuring them, and then enabling them for use within the Alteryx environment. Once you've captured a particular script, and Ian will show you an example of this through the demonstration, we have a particular configuration screen. So this is just a sample of one of the configuration screens for a given script that's been recorded. We have the ability to either record natively within SAP and import the script, or we can trigger the recording mechanism directly from the RPA connector itself. The script then will appear within the configuration screen against the particular tool that we use. And from here, you have the ability to clean up the script itself. So maybe there's a few keystrokes that weren't necessary that you can remove. Perhaps you recorded a sales order entry where you have both some header level details and item level details, maybe multiple products were captured and you want to be able to automate that particular process. So we have the ability using just simple configuration entries and selections within our tool here for you to define what we'll call groups. So if I want to be able to enter multiple sales orders automatically through a script via an Alteryx workflow, then we can group these things together and then we can feed the data that we want to be processed into those groups, and they'll process each one at a time. So it works really quite neatly, quite nicely. So ultimately then, the process with the GUI scripting will be one, I'll record my script, I'll then configure my script using the RPA connector tools. I can then test my script directly within the tool itself. You'll see some button here for test, or if I want to do a step-by-step through the script test, we can enable that as well. And then finally, once you're happy with the script working, you can execute it through the workflow through Alteryx Designer. It'll work for you. And then once you're happy with that, it can be published to Alteryx server and executed from there on a scheduled basis. In terms of HTML scripting, lots of different possibilities are open to us. From an SAP perspective, we're primarily interested in SAP Fiori. Okay, then we capture a script for an SAP Fiori screen or an SAP cloud-based solution screen. The cloud-based solution here happens to be Business by Design, or even a non-SAP cloud solution, in this case Salesforce. All right. So I capture a script recording. Now for HTML scripting, we're using a product called Selenium as the enabler. This is a Chrome-based plugin. We'll record the actions and then we'll import those into the RPA connector within Alteryx, and then we'll follow through a similar process as we would do for the SAP GUI types of scripts. So we record, we then configure, clean up the script itself, parameterize that script. We can test directly within the configuration pane itself, run it when we execute the workflow within Alteryx Designer. And then ultimately, if we're happy with that and want to start automating it, publish that to Alteryx server. Okay, so hopefully you got a sense of where we're driving at here. So Alteryx has a lot of capabilities directly within it for us to do proper process automation. What we're doing here is looking to leverage scripting capabilities, okay, configure those scripts, parameterize those scripts, and then automate them through the Alteryx suite. Okay, Ian, are you ready for your moment?
I am all set and ready to go. Let me just transfer across. You might just confirm that you can see me.
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Fantastic. Okay, so here we are. Obviously, this is our website, just so you see that. But let's skip into Alteryx, and the idea here is just to show you some examples, some ideas, hopefully some inspiration where you can, how and where you can use these tools. For those who aren't familiar with Alteryx, this is the designer, which works on desktop. As part of the standard tool set, you get all these nice tools, those fantastic tools. I think there are well over 260 of them now, but as an add-on, when you purchase from our connectors, then you can get the different standard tools, which Darren just mentioned, read and write. As you can see, we've got all different flavors of those, but we also have our RPA tools, and that's obviously what we're going to focus on today. So I'm going to build a script from scratch. Hopefully you can see how relatively easy it is. We start all our flows. This is where we build the workflows in Alteryx with an SAP logon tool. This is very like the GUI, the SAP GUI, if you're familiar with that. So this enables us to connect to our SAP system. You see I've got quite a few in here, so I'm just going to pick one of these. My username and password is retained here, double encrypted, so that's all nice and safe. It can be SSO, by the way, but if we ping that system, if it's behaving itself, these are demo systems, so they don't always. There we go. We can see that we've made a successful connection. So the next thing to do is then bring in our little robot, our RPA tool here. This is where we can start to configure, and basically if I drop this here, you'll see what happens, hopefully. You can see it's logged me on immediately by my GUI. So it's ready, good and ready to make that recording for me. So I'm just going to give myself a little bit of room here and just show you the configuration screen within Alteryx itself. Because it started that GUI screen, you can see that session is available for me to select. So I can select my GUI session, and it's here where I start to capture now the steps, or make a recording, if you like, of the steps within the GUI. So I click on record, and if I just flick across back to my GUI screen, everything I do now in the GUI is being recorded, and you see that's indicated by the little flashy lights at the bottom here. So I'm going to run here simple T code VF03. Many of you will be familiar with that. It's to view a billing document, as it explains. And if I pick a particular document and run it, and you can see here's the document I'm interested in. Now that's as far as I'm going to go, because one common case we've come across with quite a few of our customers is that they spend, maybe in the audit function, they spend quite a bit of time finding particular billing documents that they want and then just taking screenshots of those and saving a snapshot of that screen for interrogation and future use. But let's show you how we can do that with the robot. So I'm just going to close off with a /n back to the start. And that's enough recording for now. So very simple. If I say stop, I can now import everything I've recorded there into the screen. We've got a nice little function here that can jump me into the steps that I've recorded. And you can see here that here's what I've done. Look, here's my VFO3. If I click on there, you can see the values that I've recorded. You'll notice there are two sets of values, by the way. Darren touched on this before, that there are test values and run values. And the test values enable you to put specific values, maybe that you want to look at to make sure that this script is running correctly. And as you can see up here, we can then test from within the tool itself, even step by step, so we can almost debug as we go through exactly what each step is doing. If it's working successfully or if it's failing, then we can work out why. Now in the run value, we don't necessarily want it to be the same value all the time, of course. We want to parameterize that. So for instance, I put in a billing document, and it's an exact billing document, of course. It's one I keyed in, but I can change this and put a parameter in. So let's put something like bill doc into there. And that now enables me to feed into the tool values into this parameter so that we can run this robot again and again and again and take the screenshots I want. Now I want a screenshot, so we haven't done any of that yet, but we have some nice additional tools. And if I click on this line here, I know here's with my /n, which took me back to the start. But just before then, I want to take a screenshot. Now if I right click, there's a whole bunch of functionality here that we have. And one piece is these add a method. And you see there's a whole bunch of different things we can do here, output to logs, etc., etc. But what I want to do is obviously, as I mentioned, create a screen print. And if I do that, you can see this hard copy appears. And at the bottom, we can configure that. We can crop it if we want, top, bottom, left, right. We can choose our file type, and then we can choose exactly where we want our screenshot to land. So if I just put in a, try again. So I've just managed to copy the wrong thing. Second time lucky. Nope, doesn't want to copy. Typical. Jinx of the demo. Third time lucky maybe. There we go. So I'm going to put it in this particular location. You can see that within there, hidden in the middle, obviously this is just my C drive, but you can see hidden in the middle there's a parameter in there, and it's just the billing document number. So what this enables us to do, of course, is save multiple values, multiple JPEGs as they are in this case, but then parameterize them and have them identified by their billing document number. Now the last thing we need to do in this particular case is just to say what we want to repeat. So in this case it's everything. Okay, we're going to loop through these steps again and again and again in order to take our screenshots. And here's where the flow logic comes in useful. And you can see there's lots of possibilities here. So we can put logic in here in order to check values. Indeed, we can make calculations. So we can, as we loop through, we could perhaps count the number of loops, etc. And we can do if else's, as you can see, etc., etc. But all we're going to do at this point is to loop. And you can see it's added in a loop, start and end. So we're going to go through these steps again and again, however many times is necessary. And that's governed by the input that we give into this group here. Do you see this number 1 here? Just remember that for now. And that's all we need to do at the moment with our scripting. What we now need to do is give it the correct values. So what I'm going to do in this case, just to show how we might work this, is to actually use some SAP data. So I'm going to use one of our other tools, a table tool, and I'm going to look at the VBRK table, which you probably are familiar with. I'm going to use the table here. This gives us details of our billing documents, not surprisingly. And I'm going to pick specific billing documents. Okay, and those billing documents are going to relate to the payer that I'm interested in. So I could, if I wanted to, put in here a filter and tell the system exactly which data I want to bring out, so which payer. But just to make it even more dynamic, I'm going to copy that and create a text input. And now this text input allows me to input into the table tool exactly the filters that I want. Now, let's put some values in. So I know that my payer, I would like to be 1000. You just have to put it in that format for SAP to understand. And I can add another line even and say 1003. So we could add obviously as many in here as we like, and change them either manually, as you've just seen, or dynamically. Maybe there's a workflow preceding this that feeds this data into our table tool to collect the correct data for us, the correct billing documents. So if we look at the dynamic input, we can see that this is the type of structure it expects. That was just the error you saw there. It wasn't really an error, just a warning. And we'll now get the correct data, the correct list of billing documents that we're looking for. Now, one last thing, well, a couple of last things actually. We're just going to put a selection tool. This is a standard Alteryx selection tool. And you can see that the SAP technical name here is going to be used, but I want to rename that. So if you remember, we use BillDoc as our parameter. So now when we feed this data into our robot, the RPA tool will understand exactly what we're trying to parameterize. And then the last thing is just to say which group we're adding into, because as you'll see later, we don't just have to have one group of inputs. This is the first group, 0, 1, and we can see in the robot, if I just select 0, 1, now we have billing document coming in. So just to reiterate what we're doing, we're selecting a payer. We're going to ask which data, which billing documents relate to that payer, pass them through into the tool, and the tool will take screenshots of the relevant billing documents for us. So we can be very specific which billing documents we want. Simple as that, I hope. Cross your fingers. Let's hit run and see what happens. So we passed our two values into the table tool. That's now going off and finding all the billing documents for that payer. There aren't too many. There are just 8, as you can see. And that's passed those through, and immediately, as you've seen, it's starting to run through each billing document automatically. And if I now flick across, let's let that finish. If I now flick across into my folder, you can see the billing documents, the screenshots it's taken for me. As you can see, each one is numbered according to the billing documents. Okay. So that's our first demo. As you can see, we can parameterize that. The second demo takes it a little bit further, or a different way of looking at the data. Again, we've got an RPA tool, and you can see this time there's a little bit more complexity in here, although not too much. Basically what we're doing, we're running FBL3N, again another, it's a GLT code, and what we're doing, if I just click here, is we're going to take, when we run that T code, under a variant actually, we're going to take a file copy of the output of that T code. Now, you saw on the screenshot actually from Darren earlier that the structure of that T code isn't necessarily great for analytics, and let me show you what I mean. I'm going to use another of our tools here. This is called the parse tool, as you can read, and if I just connect that on the end here, just forget that guy there. I just need to point it at the right place. Just bear with me. So if we just put the file name that I pointed at, and we can see that the output, this is the output of the FBL3N. Okay, and we can see basically what it is it's sort of mini tables for each combination that you choose in the variant of GL and company code. Then you get a mini table, and then you have all your line items there, and then some totals, and then the next mini table starts. Okay, so it's quite nice for an output, very typical of an SAP output, but not necessarily good for downstream analytics. So the parse tool actually gives us some more functionality. What we can do is say, look at these two guys here, GL account and company code. It'd be nice if they were incorporated in this table. And we can do that using a right click and then process as a header field. And you can see immediately it starts to identify those. I also can see that this row here is actually the headers for the table, so I'm going to identify those. If I say raw preview now, it color codes them for me so I can start to see what's happening. The dashed lines here are no good to me, so I'm going to ignore those rows. And also remember those totals, they aren't great because in analytics obviously we can consolidate total when we like, so let's ignore that row too. Now you can see that it said look for a pipe in the first character here, but that would maybe exclude some of the rows that we don't want to exclude. But here you can see that actually, and we can change this easily though, we can say look, it's pipe space star. If I see pipe space star like this, then I know it's a totals row. And if I see that anywhere in the first 4 characters, then please ignore. And if I raw preview again, you can see we're starting to get what we want. We've got the header rows, the grays are going to be ignored. Anything white is actually our data. And then you can see hopefully down the bottom here that the totals are now being ignored too. If I look at a preview, then you can see that the GL and company code have been put into the columns with nicely segregated data that can be used downstream in analytics. And if I put a browse tool on the end of there, I can now run this and you'll see it doing exactly what I mentioned. So it's run in SAP, it's run FBL3N and found the variant. You can see that there. Run the T code. There's the file it's going to send it to, and it's all done. And if we look down here, we can see in the browse tool that the output at the end here is now that nicely formulated table data, which can be used obviously downstream to manipulate, to combine with other data sets, and be used, well, use all the magic of Alteryx to post against. Okay, those two were reads, so let's show you a write now. So this is a simple example of a write. This is again another very typical example, and in this case it's journal postings. So again, I'm going to look at the robot. If I extend this out, you can see again that we've got a loop running through this. There's a few more values in here. All these greens are parameters. As you can see, I'm going to add in particular posting dates, accounts, values, and it's running off this T code FB50, which many of you are probably familiar with. In this case, I'm using an Excel file. Again, this input could be anywhere really that produces the correct headers, and you can see by the headers I mean those parameters that I've set up myself. Okay, so all this is in Excel with these headers, simple as that. But again, it could be a flow that comes from elsewhere, from another call in SAP or another system. It doesn't matter. So we post those and we're going to push those into our RPA. Again, if we run, then those 20 records are being pushed into the RPA. And if it's behaving itself, It's just hidden behind. Here we are. And as you can see, it starts to make those postings. Now, of course, this is something that's commonly happening in SAP systems month on month all around the world, where we're manually posting these. But now we have a tool that, as you can see, all we need to do is set up the Excel and it will post those values as journals into the system. So there's a nice way of writing back. So we can read from using the tool, we can write using the tool. Just going to stop that one and then show you just one more in terms of the GUI. Now this one's slightly more complex, although in principle it's just the same piece. What we're doing here, the idea of this workflow is to update pricing conditions. So there's a little bit more complexity here. I'll show you the tool where that complexity lies. But basically what's happening is we're reading the current pricing. These are the headers. I'm looking for very specific header data and then the condition pricing records against those headers. I'm going to use a whole variety of standard Alteryx tools plus a filter tool, which is an ACS tool, which just basically formulates the input here so that the table tool, which sits in this macro, understands what exactly we want to filter on. And then downstream, we're going to manipulate that data. We're going to put a new start date that you can see using this formula tool, and then another formula tool will, as you can see, add 5% to my pricing. Okay, so very simple. I'm not going to do it for all the data set. I'm just going to do it for 20, hence the 20 here for the eagle-eyed. And then in the RPA tool, you can see it's slightly more complex. Again, just an example of how we can use some of the logic functions that you saw. We've still got a loop, but we've also got this this possibility to use a case type logic, if-thens, else, etc. type logics. And you can see also we've got a second group here, so we've got a loop within a loop. Okay. And it's possible, obviously, if you think about the way that SAP works, that you may have tables within tables to populate, and this is such an example. Let me run it then, and hopefully you see what happens. If we scroll to the left here, we've picked up our data, and we've asked SAP to send back the conditions the condition records that we want. It's now looking at the particular line items. You see there are 188. It's quickly now passed that onto the RPA tool, and you can see it's starting to create those pricing conditions. Even I can't type this fast, I promise you. And there it is, new pricing conditions increased by the 5%. Okay. So that's all I was going to show you on the GUI side. Hopefully that gives you some ideas of the type of data we can manipulate and read with the tool. As you can see, it's everything from master data to transactional data, pricing data, etc., etc. So, and we can both read that data into Alteryx and use it downstream in our workflows, or we can build Alteryx workflows that will manipulate that data in SAP for us. And all that can be automated, of course, both from your desktop, but all these functions here, as Darren mentioned before, can be applied within the server too. So any workflow can be promoted to the server and then be automated if necessary. Okay, so the last workflow I want to show you is an HTML one. And I'm actually going to show you, I'm going to do our with apologies, because our demo system our Fiori system has been a little flaky. So I'm going to actually show it on the first part of this, at least on a video, and hope that the second part works well. So here we are in our system. Now, when we record the script for HTML, we use a third-party tool called Selenium, as you can see. We just need to give it a project name. We then tell it where we're going to connect to, and this is the URL This is the URL of our Fiori system. You can see that in the bottom right-hand corner here that Selenium is recording our actions. So every step that we take can be picked up. And we're going to, in this instance, create a new customer or account. So here it is. We're going to create a new organization. We fill in whichever details are necessary. So I'll just fill in a few here. Test customer, as you can see, give it a location and maybe a country. And obviously that creates our customer. I'm also going to add in some contacts. So I'm going to say add in a contact, give it a name. As you can see, a comic fan, so Bruce Banner is a good one. We can even, obviously any field in here we can parameterize, we can add and parameterize later. So we've saved that customer. And if we go back to Selenium, you can see that the steps have been captured. And indeed, we can manipulate them in here. And there's the values that we captured on those 3 fields. So we stop that. We give the script a test name. So customer create, that's fine. And we say OK. And that file gets saved locally like that. OK. Now we can start to use our robot. As before, we connect into our system. This time it's going to be a Fiori system though, and as you can see, we connect via the URL. It pings it, so we've got good connection. And this time we use our HTML robot. And all we need to do now is go find that script that we've just recorded and bring that into Alteryx via the robot here. So there's the script we just recorded, and here are the steps as they stand. And it's these steps now that we can start to manipulate. So if I skip back into Alteryx, pretty much the same place. This is exactly the same script, except now I've added, again, some logic in here. I know where to loop. I've put in some if-else statements, a whole bunch. We can say, look, these steps here were surplus to requirement. Quite often on HTML, you can hover over something and it obviously pop a banner or something, and that will be picked up by the recording. But it's not necessary for our script to do that, so we can skip by. So we can choose the steps that are relevant. Again, there's no problem there because we can test that with step by step within Alteryx here. And as you can see, we basically bring in the values that we wish. You can see that there's again a loop within a loop, so there's actually 2 inputs here. There's a group 1 input and a group 2. The group 1 actually is to do with the customer itself, the account, and the group 2, as you'll see, is the contacts for that customer. If I come back into Alteryx, then you can see those 2 inputs, group 1 and group 2, and here are the accounts that I'm going to create. And these accounts each have a different number of possible contacts. So the idea is that on account, as you can see, number 1, it's identified as number 1, then it has 2 contacts labeled number 1. And it's that logic within the RPA tool that enables us to manage that data and create the customers we like. Pretty quick to set up, as you saw. Just have to work yourself through the logic. As you can see, we have a grumpy Fiori system, but it does get there in the end, I promise you. So there we are. It's logged on for me. And hopefully very quickly, you can see, I promise you I'm not touching this, although it doesn't seem to be doing much. There we go. It's started off that customer create. And remember, it was JZ1, JZ Cars 1, wasn't it? It's now creating that customer. There's JZ Cars 1. It's already put that in for us. You can see that why we recorded the first part, because our Fiori system isn't very happy today, but we'll get there. The next step then, and this is where we have that loop within a loop, is that we want to, as well as create the account itself, we want to also create some contacts. Here they come. And you can see there's the first contact for group 1. And we should, any second, get that second one. Now, this is within Fiori, of course. There's a second one, and there is that customer created. Now, this is within Fiori, of course, so anything that you do within Fiori, you can record and parameterize to test and then run in production, as Darren mentioned before. But also, it could be any of the other SAP CX systems by design, etc., etc. And also, it's HTML, so it could be other systems too, if that's what is useful for you. So that's all I have for today. Hopefully those demos piqued your interest and gave you some food for thought. But on that, I'm going to pass back to Darren to just close out.
Thanks, Ian. It's nice to see. Excuse me. So just to conclude, we have been answering some questions as we go. We did have a couple come in with the registrations, which if we haven't addressed today, I'll just double check and write to people individually. Just to pick up on one of the questions that did pop up. Today, what we've been showing you is our Alteryx RPA connector, and underpinning that is scripting, whether it be SAP GUI scripting or HTML scripting or coming soon Windows-based scripting. It's just one way, okay, in which we have the ability to extract data from various SAP systems and also load data or write data back into different SAP systems. If you're looking beyond scripting, if you want everything to happen, within the application itself, no visible user interfaces, then we do also support the capability of our core Alteryx connector for SAP. We support BAPI, so the ability to write data, or read and write data using BAPI, IDOC, and OData as well. All right, so I think often the trick would be for you to work out, okay, what kind of technology mechanism do you want to use? What's going to be easiest for you to use? What is your use case before deciding, should I go for the ACS, the core Alteryx connector for SAP with the right capability added, or do I want the flexibility that the RPA connector offers me? And I think one of the beauties about the RPA connector is that we can do things very, very quickly. As Ian showed you there, some of those processes are actually quite complex, right? To try to automate, and we're able to show you that within the space of what, 45 minutes. So feel free to come to the website, check them out. We offer trials of the RPA connector as well as our core Alteryx connector for SAP, along with all our other products. So if this is of interest to you, please come request a trial, and we'll be happy to help you out. Over the next couple of days, we will be sending out a follow-up link just with the recording if you'd like to see it again, or have a member of your team who didn't get to see it today. We'll also be posting it directly on the website. If you have any questions subsequent to that, please contact me directly. I'll be happy to help you out. So I'm going to be a really good man. I'm going to give you back 15 minutes of your life. So thank you very much for your attention today, everybody. Really appreciate your time, and I hope you found it interesting.